Welcome to the Forge Truth Podcast, where we are building great men as God defines greatness. Forge is a movement of men with a mission to help all men realize they are the deeply beloved, redeemed sons of the Most High God. I'm your producer, Zach, and I'm here to discuss the issues that affect men the most with our two hosts, Dr. Pete Allenson, lifelong pastor and leader of Forge, and Jason Quinones, Bishop of Core Faith Church in Oviedo, Florida. Men, welcome to the show.
Hey, here we are, huh?
Hey. Hola, mi hermanos.
That's right. Hey, you look a little more spiritual than you did last time. I don't know if what are you doing?
Well, I got my my wrist is back, so I
Yeah.
have two hands now, you know?
You got healed, huh?
I got healed. Well, it's still in the process, but at least it's not looking like surgery, so that's exciting.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Even if it takes a while, anything that'll heal, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have to live with that for the rest of your life, that's a miracle.
Well, especially after like 45. Anything that heals after 45 is a
That
miracle.
is so true. You're that old? Good.
I'm going to be 48 this year.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. That's great.
I assumed.
He looks that old to you. Well, you just turned 40, so there it
Yeah,
is.
I know.
Okay. All right.
I'm in there. I'm right in there. Well, today we do have a guest in studio. I want to bring them in as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So, Pete, why don't you introduce our guest today?
We are privileged to have Eric Gray with us today. Eric is the executive director of the Christian Center in Central Florida. Executive director, Christian Service Center.
You got it.
In Central Florida.
Yep.
Of Central Florida.
Yep.
Good night. It took forever to get that out, but Eric, it's good to have you with us, man.
Thank you for having me. I same age here as Jason, realizing, and then realized that maybe I need to, looking at Zach and my beard and gray, we need to work on that because it makes us both look older than we are. So,
What's that stuff that that you
Just
put
for
on?
men.
Just for men. Yeah.
I don't use that, by the way. I just want to make that clear. I do not use that. But
You're
I
just-
think
you're gonna
the
stick
Lord,
with that?
You
the
found
Lord,
another
the Lord has
product?
been merciful in one area because I'm
On
bald.
the
So he
top.
took my hair and he just said, I'll leave you with a dark beard. And I just promise you, I'm actually starting to get some grays in my beard.
although I think Pete looks better than all of us because clearly you work out and keep healthy. You can just tell by looking at you. So, yeah.
Well, I try to, but
Pete's
I do
93,
shave.
but
I
he looks like
shave
he's
my
45,
face. I
yeah.
shave on purpose because everything's gray. So
Well, it's on top and the mustache.
There it is,
But you're making it work. It looks good.
I dye mine gray just because no one takes me seriously otherwise.
is that what it is? Oh man. Well, now this is on video, so true stuff. Well, listen, Eric, tell us about your family, and you've been in nonprofit leadership all your adult life.
Yeah.
Tell us about your family, and then we want to talk about the Christian Service Center and what that's all about and what's going on with men, and we even want to talk about the blue bag deal that we at Forge are doing.
Well, I love talking about my family. I'm really proud of my family. I got to see all of them this weekend. I'm the oldest of 5 brothers and sisters, and
Wow.
Amongst them, there are now 19 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. And I'm now a grandfather, and so we were all together in the same place 2 days ago, and so it was great. And not everybody lives in Florida anymore, but the family originates from Florida, going back 8 generations on both sides of my family from the Panhandle. So we're very ingrained in Florida history and culture. And my family here in Orlando, because I have 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy, and 2 of them in college, and 1 in middle school, 1 in high school, and now a granddaughter. She's 18 months old, and she's the light of everyone's life, and things couldn't be better.
Oh man, that is great. Yeah. That's great. Now, so it was girl, boy. Is the boy the baby?
No, it was boy, girl, girl.
Okay.
But my son has now gone off to college at Florida Atlantic, which means we don't hear from him at ever. And so I think he's still there. I assume he's still there. Maybe we'll see him this summer. I'm not really sure.
Gotcha.
He's living his best life down there in Boca Raton.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, yeah, and you went to what university here in Florida?
So I went to the University of Florida for undergrad, where I was really involved in a couple things, the Methodist Student Center there, but also the marching band. I was big time in the marching band in Florida. And then how I got into the nonprofit world was there was a program that started when I was in school there called Dance Marathon, which is a fundraiser for the Children's Miracle Network that is done at universities all over the United States now. But it's basically every school does it differently. We did it 32 hours awake and on your feet. They say no sleeping, no sitting, no kidding.
Good night.
So that was my indoctrination into the world of charitable fundraising, and never looked back.
Wow. All right. So you've been, how long have you been with the Christian Service Center?
So this is 4 years, and I took over for the previous director who'd been there for 25 years, Commissioner Robert Stewart, who's commissioner at the city of Orlando.
Sure.
And he had done a great job of keeping that organization afloat for a very long time. And he turned 65 and decided to retire, and I was asked to come in and take over, and it's been great. A lot of work, just because I took over about 2 months into the pandemic, but in some ways that worked out, to be, we kind of turned it into a positive. I mean, there's no silver linings to a global pandemic, but you just kind of make the best you can. And so we had the opportunity to make a lot of changes during a time that the people weren't coming around as much for a short period of time, at least to volunteer. While at the same time, we had more guests, what we call our homeless friends. We had more guests coming than ever before, and so we had to make some changes. Where when your entire volunteer base disappears overnight, and your client base triples overnight, it forces you into some very quick decisions. So it's been an interesting couple of years, but things are going poorly and things are going well at the same time. People ask all the time, like, how are things going? I never quite know how to answer that question, because the number of people experiencing homelessness is on the rise, not only here in Orlando, but nationally. So in that sense, it's not going so well. But we're able to get more people each year out of homelessness. And we had a really successful year last year, but it's just a drop in the bucket. And so there's just so much more that needs to be done. So it's always a mixed bag. That's the most common question people ask, like, how are things going? And I'm never quite sure
how to answer that.
I was like, it's really crappy, actually. There's people living on the streets, but at the same time, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of really good things to try to help.
So why is homelessness on the rise? What are the causes?
It's actually very simple. Fortunately, we've had a lot of study and science about this at universities all over the U.S. and around the world. And for the longest time, I think people just assumed that certain relationships to poverty, certain relationships to the economy, mental illness, addiction, and all those things have a bearing on homelessness, but nothing has a bearing on it quite like the lack of affordable apartments in a community. And so it's been a real interesting lesson learned for me, because I came in, like I think most people have this assumption that, well, homelessness is all about mental illness. There's actually no direct correlation between mental illness and homelessness. There's no direct correlation between addiction and homelessness. So, but different communities have different rates of homelessness. So Boston has a higher rate of homelessness than Orlando. Minneapolis has a higher rate than Houston. Seattle has a higher rate than Los Angeles. And people have tried to figure out why. Like, why do different communities have different rates of homelessness? So lots of work and study has gone into this, and the best work has come out of the University of Washington in Seattle, and they have found extremely convincing statistical evidence to show that the lack of affordable housing in a community over an extended period of time is a direct correlation to the rise in homelessness in that community. And it's really, we're just squeezing people out of the market because we just haven't been building apartments that lower income families can afford. And the process of building those apartments is going to take the next 20, 30, 50 years for us to get back to a normal place, and a lot of cultural changes that the country is going to have to make. But now we know what the solution is. There's no question. Everybody agrees on this. Every elected official, every service worker like me, every professor, everybody, that part is positive. So there's hope there. We're all on the same page about what the solution is. How to get there is the real challenge.
Big challenge.
Yeah.
You hear about the working poor. I've heard about that. They're living in their cars and they have a job, but they can't afford a place to live and getting set.
Orlando, in many ways, has a lot of the same challenges that communities all over the United States do. There's a couple things that make us unique. One, of course, is that we're the most popular tourist destination in the country. 77 million people will likely visit the community this year. That is an amazing statistic when you consider. It's hard to put it in context, but it's 3 times more people than will visit Paris, France this year.
Wow.
And so what's amazing is that even though Orlando is the 23rd largest market in the country. When you take the Orange, Seminole, Osceola County, Orlando metro area, we're the 23rd largest market. But when you consider that the average tourist visits for about 5 days, that's the average domestic tourist. Foreign tourists actually visit for an average of 9 days. But when you just take the domestic average and apply it to all of our visitors, we have about 1,030,000 people sleeping in the community on top of the 2.4 million residents every single night. So we're not really a community of 2.4 million people. We're really a community of 3.4 million people, which makes us now the 17th largest market in the country, larger than the Tampa Bay area. And even when you add in Tampa's tourism. So it's a lot of study that has to go into what kind of resources are being applied to that, because the question we like to ask is, do tourists take showers, right? and because they use the water and they use the roads and they use other public resources, and I think all of that has to kind of come into play. And they also rent homes here, and they buy homes here, and they timeshare those homes, and so our housing market is tricky. So when you look at the top 50 metros in the United States, the worst metropolitan area in terms of what we call cost burden or rent burdened is the Miami market. So where more than 50% of their household, in this case, if you're spending more than 50% of your household income on rent, then you're cost burdened in that regard. Well, in Miami, that number is about 63% of their community is rent burdened. Orlando's number 2 in the nation, it's 61%. So 61% of every household in the 3-county area is spending more than 50% of their income on rent. And that creates a really dangerous dynamic where people can be on the precipice of eviction very quickly. And what we've seen in Orange County in particular the last 3 years is increasing record-breaking years for evictions. So we've had year after year, and we're on track again this year to break a record for 4th year in a row for evictions.
Wow.
And that leads to homelessness a lot of times.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you obviously know more than I have ever known on this subject, and you're an expert in that. That's wonderful to know that you're at point on that.
That's the only thing I really can talk about. So don't ask me anything else.
So we're not going to talk about brain surgery or anything else.
I got nothing.
So we are at Forge want to be a part of helping a little bit with what we're talking about, the Blue Bag event. We're kind of reaching into our closets and dressers and bringing out clothes that we don't use for men in particular, because Forge is, of course, a men's deal. How are men doing in your what can you say about men, and how? What can we learn from you about men in the greater Orlando area?
So I mean, nationally, the unsheltered homeless population is about 70% men, and that's doesn't mean that women aren't experiencing the same challenges that men are. Unfortunately, women are staying in certain living situations that are dangerous and terrible for other reasons. But we see more men at our campus than we see women. And one of the things that we try to provide is emergency clothing. And so when you're living on the streets and you're out in the elements, things get worn down a little bit faster, and you're sweating through your clothes, and you're sleeping in your clothes, and getting rained on in your clothes. It just wears down. And so we have a great nonprofit at our campus called SALT, stands for Service and Love Together. But they provide showers and laundry services. And so our clients can come and have their clothes washed. And they do quite frequently. They take advantage of that. But we also have an emergency clothing program. It's set up like a store. We actually call it the Unique Boutique. But you come in and you shop for clothing, but you don't spend money on it. You just go through the experience in a dignified way. But there are about 13 nonprofits in the downtown area that all participate in our emergency clothing program. So like the Coalition for the Homeless, which is our area's largest shelter, their case managers can actually give someone a voucher, almost like a gift certificate, to come get clothing at the store. But it's all done electronically, so that you can't be traded or sold or anything like that. And then you just walk in and say, "Hey, my name is Zach, and look me up." And they'll say, "Yeah, you looks like you pick out two of this, and one of these." And they'll look around. If we have it, they can check out like you would at a regular store at the cash register, except we don't actually exchange any money for it.
Yeah.
The downside is that we just never have quite enough. And the things that we struggle with the most are the things from the ground up. So shoes is the commodity of highest value when you're homeless. It's the second most common thing to get stolen, other than your wallet. And so, and you kind of burn through your shoes really fast. So, when they get wet and you're walking around everywhere, they don't last as long as you might like. And a lot of the shoes that we get donated are, unfortunately, are dress shoes. People, that they tend to, kind of gravitate towards donating that more than anything else, because we hold on to things like athletic shoes longer.
Right.
But we don't really need dress shoes, particularly we don't need heels. And so we get a lot. And then from there, it's socks, and then pants or jeans or shorts, underwear. And then one of the biggest needs is just belts. When you're healthy and live in the United States in the 21st century, you tend to be a little bit more round in the waist. And the clothing that people are donating are coming from people who have means. The people who need the clothing are malnourished, and so they're smaller. And so we have to have belts to cinch things in.
Wow.
And I would say shoes and belts are the two things that we just struggle with the most. Men's clothing is really important, though, because it's also versatile, where women can wear men's clothing, but men can't wear women's clothing because of the size, for the most part, and just the style of it. They won't do that. We take T-shirts, we take dress shirts, we'll take jackets, we'll take all that. But the thing we need the most is everything from below the waist. And we can't accept used undergarments, whether they be underwear or brasiers. It's against the law. So we, even if you wash them and all, we can't accept them. But so we have to purchase underwear, and we have to purchase bras, and we do a lot with sports bras because they're a little more versatile and they work for people a little bit better. And a lot of men's underwear we buy, like boxer briefs, because women can also use those a little bit more easily. And and so that just little things like that you kind of learn over time. That's what the need is. Shoes and socks, pants, belts, underwear. That's the big need.
Huh. Wow. You have any extra? I've got a couple extra belts. You have any belts, Bishop?
I have like 10 belts that I'm about to put in this blue bag.
Hey, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Golly.
And my son, because he's growing out of his sneakers so well, so I have a pair of sneakers that he's worn like 3 times, and we're going to put that in there as well. And yeah.
Man, I mean, I wouldn't have even thought about it from that perspective, but you're right. If you're spending a lot of time outside, the shoes, the clothes, you're not changing enough, and they wear out and they get bad.
Yeah. Well, and one of the really sad things, just being very real, here, is that there are not enough places for people to go to the bathroom. There's very few places where if you don't own a home and you're not working somewhere, nobody wants to let you in their business to use the restroom. So unfortunately, a lot of people end up soiling themselves too, especially overnight. And particularly because we have a growing number of elderly adults who are living on the streets, that becomes a problem too. And so they can't wear that clothing, again, the next day.
That's right.
But they sometimes have to anyway, because they don't have any choice. So we go through a lot. We've also have a unique problem in Orlando with the heat, and that we've had more extreme heat days here each year. It just keeps getting a little bit hotter and a little bit hotter. So, 10 years ago, it was not uncommon for us to have about 5 extreme heat days, which means you have a heat index of 105 or greater. And the heat index is a combination of the air temperature and the relative humidity. We sometimes refer to it as like the feels like temperature, but it's a real thing. And this last year in Orlando, we had 22 extreme heat days. So on the pavement outside, the just regular blacktop pavement will get in excess of 180 degrees with no shade if it's in that level of temperature within about 2 hours. If you step on that pavement and you don't have shoes on, you'll end up with second, third degree burns. So we see a lot during the summer of presence of fire rescue coming out for burns, where people have just touched the sidewalk with their feet or touched the pavement and just didn't have it. So we buy a lot in bulk. We buy flip-flops. It's the only thing we can really afford to buy in bulk, and we have an outlet where we can purchase them about $2 a piece. So at the very least, if you come in, you have no shoes at all, you'll have something to protect your feet. And we buy them in all sorts of shapes and sizes. But I don't think people really understand some of the impacts that being in this extreme weather has to.
Yeah. And I guess I don't tend to think of Orlando as extreme weather, but it is, because we're in AC whenever we want to be.
Right.
So yeah, that's raising our consciousness of this, and this will be helpful for our guys when they think about what should I put in the blue bag.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people listening, that live their ordinary lives, and their encounters with the homeless population are just, the random incidences as you're going about your life? What should they be thinking about when they have those encounters?
Well, I think that's also a very common question, I guess. I think you're asking. A lot of times people will ask, what should I do when I see someone on the side of the road, asking for money and whatnot. And I tell them the same thing every time, which is do whatever's on your heart. The studies that have been done here, even in Orlando, show that, yes, about 70 or more % of the time that people are using that money to purchase cigarettes or alcohol from a local convenience store. And if you don't want your money going to that, then probably it's best not to do that. But sometimes, a pack of cigarettes or a beer is what that person needs to have to get through the day. And if you don't have any problem with that, then just go with God and do it. I think that what you also need to remember is that for every one person you see that's on the side of the road, and that person is almost assuredly homeless. There are no people out there trying to make money, panhandling. I've actually gone panhandling myself. It's a terrible experience. Nobody really generates any money doing it. And I went out 8 hours one day in downtown Orlando, and they had these boxes you could stand in. I went through the whole experience, and I ended up with about $2.35 after 8 hours of doing it.
No.
Yeah, and so
did you dress like poorly?
I didn't dress up or do anything crazy. I just wore a T-shirt and jeans and a hat. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Just stood out there. There were people who walked by that knew me, that it walked right past me and didn't recognize me because they just walk right by,
Wow.
And I think that's the part that we are trying to teach, is that panhandling is not the picture of homelessness you should have in your head when you think about homelessness. In the same way that, we used to think about homelessness as the hobo with the stick and the bandana backpack riding the rails, right? Now the image that most people have is the guy at the bottom of the off-ramp with a cardboard sign.
Yeah.
If you're actually wanting to picture the most common experience of homelessness, you think of a single guy living in a car in a Walmart parking lot. That's the most common picture of homelessness. Now in the United States, there are, for the first time this last year, for more people who are experiencing homelessness are sleeping in cars than they are sleeping at shelter. There's just not enough shelter beds anywhere in the United States, including here in Orlando. So we need 10 times the number of shelter beds, and most communities are not willing to do that because nobody wants to have that shelter built in their backyard. And so we're really struggling with trying to figure out where people can go. And as a result, what's happening is we are criminalizing homelessness. And the criminalization of homelessness is really an outgrowth of a lack of understanding of the experience. People who are homeless are no more likely to be criminals than the people sitting around this table. From just statistically, the rate of criminal activity amongst people experiencing homelessness is no higher than the regular population of the country. People experiencing homelessness are slightly more likely to be experiencing mental illness, but there's been no scientific evidence to show whether the mental illness is what led to homelessness or if their experience of homelessness is what led to mental illness. Addiction's the same way. 19% of Americans are experiencing addiction. It's about 31% of people experiencing homelessness. So it's more, but it's not the majority, which means 69% of people experiencing homelessness are not addicted to anything. And there's also no causal link, meaning the addiction could have been as a result of the experience of homelessness. So this idea that people who are homeless are criminals, drug addicts, and mentally ill is just not true. And the best comparison I can give is actually similar to HIV. When I think most of us are old enough to remember in the 80s, HIV was thought of as the gay disease. It was a terrible, they did it to themselves. They deserve it. We shouldn't need to worry about them. They chose this lifestyle, and thus, whatever they have coming to them, it's just going to happen. Homelessness is a lot like that right now. There's just such a complete lack of understanding around the issue. People don't choose this as a lifestyle. And anybody who's saying that or trying to advocate that that's the case just needs to come spend a day with me. And I will absolutely disabuse them of that notion. Nobody chooses this. It's a horror show beyond anything that you can possibly imagine. And I have yet to meet a client who is female in the last 4 years who has been on the street for more than a week who hasn't been raped. I have frequently worked with men who have been on the street for more than a week who have been raped. This is not something that you choose to do as a lifestyle for the long term. In fact, 80% of people experiencing homelessness do so for 8 days or less. So the trigonometry of all of this gets really, really hard to wrap your mind around. So you see like a tent encampment off in the woods somewhere near your house, and you think, well, those people have been there for years because it's the same tents I've seen. Likely, the people that you see in that area are different about every week or two. And so it's a completely new group of people that's constant. Now, there are some people who will experience homelessness for years, sometimes decades, but that's the minority. You're talking about 5 or 10% of the population of people experiencing homelessness. Most people, it's because they've lost a job or had a major medical illness, had no family to back them up, or their family is in just as bad a shape, and they needed to find some place to stay, so they're living in their car in front of a gym or a 24-hour Walmart because they could get access to a bathroom, or it's not, there's lighting, so it's safe. But we're doing everything we can to criminalize the issue and to basically try to arrest our way out of the problem, and that's going to lead to some bigger fiscal problems for the community because we right now, for the first time in Orange County, for years we had a census at the jail was going down because we decriminalized marijuana. And so there was just fewer and fewer people at the 33rd Street jail. Now, so just in last year, the census has been going back up, specifically because the Orange County Sheriff's Office and the Orlando Police Department are making more arrests of people experiencing homelessness. And they're not doing anything against their own policy. They're doing their jobs the way they're supposed to. It's the policy that's the problem, and it's the lack of understanding about the issue that's the problem. Wow. So education about the issue is really important, and just in the same way that it was 40 years ago when we talked about AIDS. And I think that's where we're at.
Wow. This is far more complex than I had thought, and your grasp of the statistics is really, really helpful. I think the other thing that stands out to me is the heart you have. You see these people, you treat them with dignity, and they need to be treated with dignity.
Well, I think to Zach's question, one of the things I didn't say and I should have was when you see somebody that's experiencing homelessness, and you're usually going to see them on the side of the road, if you can't do anything else, just say hi. Just acknowledge that they exist as a person. You don't have to do anything else. So you're not required to do anything else. But just being a polite citizen, a polite human being, just saying, God bless you. Hey, man, have a great day. Or just say, just nod your head to them, look them in the eye, and acknowledge their presence. Because if nothing else, the idea is that this exists. And when we walk right by the problem all the time, then we are the problem. We become the problem. And that's what we're trying to teach, is to just not walk right by.
What do you think about those people that are, sort of have kits in their car, like bags with a couple of bottles of water in there, or power bars or something like that, and maybe a gift card or something?
They're very helpful. I think that we encourage people to hold on to things like that. Like socks become because they're easy. They're not going to spoil in your car. People say, I have beef jerky or a bottle of water. Bottle of water you keep in your car, like the one we have here. If it's in your car for too long a time, the plastic starts to leach into the water, and so that can become actually unsafe.
Yeah.
Even for you to drink. Nobody should be drinking that. But I think people ask, what can I do? What can I do? And a lot of times we'll say, hey, let's donate clothing or come out and serve. But the number one thing that I really encourage people to do is to just stay knowledgeable. And if you're not subscribing to your local newspaper, subscribe. If you're not giving to your local public radio station, give. If you're not watching the news, on a regular basis in your local community, watch the news. The idea of just staying engaged is so important. And we're about to lose local media in this community and many other communities of our size. And when that happens, when local journalism goes away, there's nothing stopping people from doing whatever they want to basically make money or control power in a way that is unstoppable. And that's one of the things, if you really want to engage and be involved in every problem in the community, it's stay engaged, legitimately stay engaged, and, listening to things like this podcast, attending, events, attending seminars, going out and staying involved in your civic organizations, joining a Rotary Club, all those things are helpful, but nothing is more helpful than just read the newspaper, man. I mean, just pick up a paper and read the newspaper. And I think, people are so scared about, well, the media is biased this, the media is biased with that. All right, well, that's fine, but read something local. Find a way to get something local.
Stay involved locally.
Yep.
Yeah, well, a lot of great information here, and clearly you're passionate about this group of people, and I applaud that, and I think that's wonderful. Thank you for raising awareness for our listeners, and I want to thank our listeners at home for listening to this episode of the Forge Truth Podcast. If you want to join the conversation, you have any questions or comments about what we talked about today, you can email the show at forge@forgetruth.com. And if you're interested in learning more about the Forge movement, you can check out our website at forgetruth.com. What is the website of your organization?
ChristianServiceCenter.org.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks again for listening. And Jason, will you lay down a challenge for our men today?
Yeah, guys. We can be involved in this and help other guys that are going through this. This isn't just a women and children situation. There are men that are hurting out there, and don't just assume that the guy on the side of the road wants to be in that situation. Pray for them and get as involved as you can.